Gonna wait to see if it's streaming. Apparently you can't put GIP in the name of the Twitch stream, I'm not sure why. It's probably because it's an acronym for something that they don't like, but I don't understand. And I searched on Google, but nothing showed up. So I think I'm gonna continue to do what I was doing before. I'm gonna read this stuff with the text-to-speech, and then I'm gonna study the file, the other file. See if I can figure out what's wrong with the MSBuild thing. I'm probably not gonna stay here for a long time, but hopefully I can figure out today.
A comprehensive guide to fixing Node-Gyp issues on Windows. Node-Gyp is a tool that enables the compilation of native add-on modules for Node on multiple platforms. It is widespread use and is included as a dependency in many NPM packages. On most systems, this isn't an issue, and installing Node-Gyp with the rest of your packages works as expected.
On most systems, this isn't an issue, and installing Node-Gyp with the rest of your packages works as expected. Unfortunately, this is not the case with Windows, as is evidenced by this thread from 2015. The Windows environment makes getting Node-Gyp to work a less than stellar developer experience, full of multiple pitfalls and many ways for things to go wrong. This guide is meant to help solve the issues that can arise when installing a package that requires Node-Gyp. 1. Try running npm install with the no optional flag. If you're lucky, the dependency that requires Node-Gyp will be optional, and you can skip the entire process required to get it working. Try running npm install no optional to install only the required dependencies. If you run this and still get the error, I have bad news, you're in for a bit of a ride. As we begin our journey into getting Node-Gyp up and running, here's an important note for all of the steps that follow. Make sure that you're always working in an elevated terminal, with administrator privileges, and that you restart your console whenever a download is complete. 2. Try downloading the Windows Build Tools package. According to the Node-Gyp documentation, this step should be the end-all be-all solution to fixing Node-Gyp problems. For most people, that's true. NPM has a package called Windows Build Tools that should automatically install every.
It's kind of scary that they make this words abandonable, let's say. I think on Twitch especially, it's from what I've seen is really crazy. I think they ban people or shadow ban people for saying simp or something like that, and there are other keywords as well, which is really crazy to think about.
NPM has a package called Windows Build Tools that should automatically install.
But also the whole freedom of speech thing is complicated because there's likely a line that is correlated with the size of the influence you have, because more power you have, the more dangerous it becomes for the information to change people's minds. And I think that's the debate everyone is having now, and the reason why there is the conflict and people talk about this a lot is because this solution probably approaches a point of singularity that is a paradox between the left and right, and that's why the left and right exists. It's just a frequency of movement, and it depends on the context, and the context is infinite. So that's why it's extremely difficult to regulate freedom of speech, because with the power it becomes more dangerous. So to find the equilibrium is really difficult, and because every human being is biased based on the RAS, reticular activation system, everyone works as a vector in the network, and that's why there's the balance, which is the pendulum between left and right. And the whole thing about cancel culture and the movement against it is just it's like playing poker, where things are constantly trying to achieve an equilibrium based on the left and right, and that's what politics is. But I don't think that maybe, yeah, I think you should remain optimistic. I think that's what I'm trying to do at the end of the day, is use machine learning to find the optimal play, just the Nash equilibrium of the pendulum, which is going to be relative, and it's going to be based on the frequency. So I think that's something that people don't think about much, is they think binary because that's human nature, and we want to simplify things. So to save energy and minimize risk. So people tend to think about either banning people or not, or allowing certain words or not. And I think that's the challenge, because it depends on the circumstance and the influence of the power that the speech has and the engagement that it has. So that's why it's so difficult. And I think that as it approaches the optimal solution, it's probably not computationally reducible because it probably is infinity, which is every circumstance is unique because there is an infinite amount of variables which determine the present moment, and you can't use computation to find the optimal approach. But I think you can get close to it, or closer than we can with machine learning, just like everything else. Because the frequency of computation changes. But I think there is a direct correlation between the size of someone, the amount of followers, and the influence they have, and how dangerous, quote unquote, is the speech. And dangerous is relative to the overall balance of the vectors that make up whatever network you're trying to stabilize, which in this case is humanity and then human beings as a whole. So because everyone has different genetics, everyone has a different vector. All the forces of the different vectors make up the geometrical fractal structure that is society. And that's why it's hard to regulate the whatever you're gonna say on social media. Because the difference is not just the scale, but it's also something that is very difficult for me, and I think for everyone else to deal with, because whenever you're doing something online, you're not genetically built for having all the stuff that you do recorded. So you have to think about past and future as well. So it's not just the scale of the influence you have in the present moment, but it's also the scale of the influence you have over the past and the future that changes because the density of information changes. So the abstraction, which is an extension of human beings, becomes more solidified based on the information, because that's what basically we're doing with the data centers, I think. So data centers condense the information, which changes the way that the human beings are prepared to interact with the environment because of the hardware that we have based on the genetics.
NPM has a package called Windows Build Tools that should automatically install everything you need to get Node-Gyp working, including the Microsoft Build Tools, compilers, Python, and everything else required to build native Node modules on Windows. The good news is that installing this package should take care of all of the wiring up of these components. The bad news is that there are a lot of things included in it. Depending on the version you download, it can hover between 3 and 8 gigabytes, all to get some dependencies installed. The install can take upwards of 30 minutes depending on your connection, so don't despair if it seems like the install is hanging for a while. You can download them by running this command, npm install global production Windows Build Tools vs 2015. Important note: if you run this command without any additional flags, you'll install the files associated with the latest version of Visual Studio.
Yeah, like I was saying previously in the first part of this, it's probably the version of MSBuild, and that's the mistake I'm getting there. So I think the final solution is going to be to change the version, which might be more complicated because I might have to uninstall the one that I have and then reinstall this older version, and then I have to see the environment variables. And I took a brief look at this, and it also talks about installing Python 2.7, so I might have to do that as well.
If you run this command without any additional flags, you'll install the files associated with the latest version of Visual Studio, which is VS 2017 at the time of writing. However, Node-Gyp requires the v140 distributable, not the v150, which comes with VS 2017. This is why the VS 2015 flag is added to the end of the command, since that's the last version of Visual Studio that came with the v140 package. You can see more notes about that near the bottom of the package's website. Hopefully, that's all it will take for you to get everything installed. If you've still got issues, then you are going to have to grab all of the required files manually. 3. Download the Visual Studio 2015 build tools manually. Rather than installing the build tools through NPM, download them manually. You can find them on the Microsoft download page. Once they're downloaded, just run the installer. 4. Tell Node to use the 2015 build tools. Now that we have the build tools, we need to tell Node to use them. You'll have to run this command, npm config set MSBs version 2015 global. 5. Make sure you have Python 2.7 installed. Next up is to download Python 2.7. This is important. By default, you'll install the newest version, 3.x.x, but only 2.7 is compatible with Node-Gyp. If you try to use a newer version of Python, you'll get a syntax error due to print being made into an actual function in Python 3. If you have another version of Python already installed, that's okay. They can coexist with each other. You can grab Python 2.7 at this link. 6. Set your Node config to use Python 2.7. Now that you have Python 2.7, you are going to have to set Node to use it by default. To do that, run this command, npm config set Python 2.7. If you followed the last few steps, you should now have everything necessary to get Node-Gyp working. Make sure you...
I think I'm gonna install this anyway, because it doesn't interfere with the versions that I have, I think. So there's no reason not to download already. But I'm definitely gonna look at the file first, and I'm gonna study MSBuild, and I'm gonna study the file because I wanna understand how it works. And then after that, I'll try to download this stuff and change the version, and then see if it works.
Make sure you've restarted your terminal and are running it as an administrator, and try doing your install again. Hopefully, at this point, you can successfully install the dependencies you need. If not, we're going to have to try one last thing. 7. Repeat Step 2 with the Visual Studio 2017 build tools. I've personally had issues when I've tried to download the 2017 version of the build tools, even when trying to use newer versions of Node-Gyp. If you look online, you'll see lots of other people with the same problem, including some of the commenters on this Stack Overflow question. However, most of the documentation around Node-Gyp and compiling native Node modules on Windows doesn't specify to use the VS 2015 flag, and some even mention downloading the 2017 version. If you are still having issues with getting Node-Gyp to run, try repeating Step 2 while omitting the VS 2015 flag. 8. Try installing an older version of Node. Still getting an installation error? Try installing an older version of Node. If you're on an experimental version, try going back to the last stable release, and then make sure that you're actually using that version when you try and do npm install. If that still doesn't work, try going back to Node 8. You will find some issues online of people having issues with Node 10 that were resolved by downgrading to Node 8, and sometimes newer versions of Node don't play nice with Node-Gyp. 9. File an issue. If you are still having trouble getting Node-Gyp to work, then your issue probably doesn't fall into one of the more common problems. It's worth doing some research online to see if that solves your problem. Otherwise, your best option is to file an issue on the GitHub page for Node-Gyp and see what advice you can get there. Other resources. Much of this information can now be found on the GitHub README for Node-Gyp, but it wasn't always there. It only made an appearance after a few thousand posts from disgruntled Windows users who just wanted to install some dependencies. Even then, the information is missing some of the issues that arise with installing the wrong version of the build tools. Another great resource is Microsoft's guide on working with Node on Windows. It even has sections dedicated to compiling native Node modules and resolving basic Node-Gyp problems. Additionally, this question on Stack Overflow contains useful answers and comments regarding this issue. Leave a note in the comments if you've found anything else helpful in solving Node-Gyp issues. Sharier. June 16, 2019.
It's really annoying to do things with Windows. Don't know why though. I understand that most of the servers are built with Linux. That's probably the reason why Linux is popular for developers. But Windows is also really big. So I'm not really sure why these things break with Windows, because it seems like if most people use Windows, it would make sense for developers to take that into consideration when they're doing these things more heavily. But maybe the developers that work on these things, the overall majority who uses Linux, and then just a normal population that uses Windows the most. It has to be that. I don't see any other reasonable explanation. Yeah, so the true solutions are the Python versions and the MSBuild that he gives here, which was the conclusion I got you while doing this stuff. But I think I'm gonna search for, I'm gonna read this file here, see if I can understand. Still think I remember some of the stuff, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I think it creates the class, then passes the argument, creates this list with objects, which are the command line arguments with mapping to a function of each one. Then it calls the function based on the argument that it gets, and then it's calling rebuild, which calls build at the end after config, and after clean and config, then it's build, and each one is a require statement. It's gonna create a require statement, which is pretty much gonna load the file in the same directory as this one for all the commands that it has here: build, clean, configure, Yeah, that's what I remember. So at the end, it's calling this file, and then it's failing on this file. When it's trying to build node heat, whatever you say, however you say this. Or maybe I should delete this thing here as well, because I'm probably gonna close this and I'm gonna forget. And this file is something from Node, so it might cause problems later, and then I won't remember that I did this. So I think I'm gonna remove this now, because I don't think it does anything here, because it's saying that it's Windows 32 here, even though it's Windows 64, but here it uses Windows 32 as well, so I don't think it matters. Because this command is MSBuild. It's getting the path to build config.jp. GYP. I guess I can print this. I can run this and print. Console log, actually. I think the question, I'm thinking about the freedom of speech thing. I think the question is, how do you compute context? That's the thing that is hard to figure out. Because I think that's where the problem comes from. And the nuance. And the subjective nature of context, which subjective and objective is just a spectrum. It's a spectrum of density of computation based on the experience of an observer. So matter itself is only real temporarily based on the experience of the observer. So the higher density, the more concrete something is, the more objective, and the lower density, the more subjective. And gravity is the spectrum of these things. And space-time itself and the relationship between abstraction and matter is the spectrum of those things. And I think that's the reason why it's difficult, because everyone is a funnel of information, so the context is always relative and is always unique. So, and you can always reframe it by changing the way that the information is presented, which changes the context and changes the density. In the same way that politics and money corrupt science. I think that's why it's so difficult to figure out. There must be a way to use artificial intelligence, the data that the sites get, to compute that and see and calculate the impact that it has somehow. It is really difficult to do that. I think that's why the people that are running these platforms are struggling, because it's a very difficult question of how can you measure the impact that the data has, because it's hard to classify what is in impact exactly, what's the point, what's the boundary that determines, what's the boundary between abstraction and reality. And I think that comes to the question of identity and the hard problem of consciousness. At what point a decision becomes an action? I don't think I... Oh, but this is only if you pass the verbose flag, I think. So it doesn't show. So maybe it went to this. I think this is this part here, probably. This has build here. Oh, it's .sln. Oh, this. So I think it goes through this. And then does this. And then goes back there. Oh no, it's here. So it's gonna hit this and then push. Oh, I think I remember I was seeing this thing here. Yeah, I was gonna look for, in the very beginning I was gonna look for this in the file, just see, because I remember looking at this. So I'm pretty sure that hits this point here, because of the print statements there, the console.logs, that have the file extension that I found. Yeah, this one. So I'm pretty sure that goes through those points there, and they finish here. Oh, there's a log.info there, but it doesn't have here. Let me see. Yeah, there's no log.info though. So maybe I'm looking in the wrong place. I think it's the right file, but not. I'm mistaking this because it seems like. Oh, but maybe this glob here. Maybe this is the thing that has the console log inside. I don't think it's worth spending time going down that path. It's more interesting for this problem to focus on this because I'm pretty sure it gets to this point here. Yeah, this is the thing here. Configuration, release, platform. So the build type is release and the platform x64. So I was correct probably. I just don't understand how these logs show up here if there are no console, no info here. Oh, so P is 64 here and should be Windows 32, I think. Maybe that's the problem. The issue that I have is that I can't run this script specifically because this ran. Maybe if I install the packages again, it's gonna go through this so I can see. But I'm pretty sure, so it's hitting this point here, so it means that it's not gonna hit this one. And see if there's anything else, because I think the error is there. But then it's calling a file, so maybe it's not. Yeah, maybe the mistake comes later. I can't be here. Okay, so it's either on the one of those two there that has windows. It's either here or up there. The issue is understanding what does that thing does. That's the issue. It doesn't seem like it's this one. I think it fails on here. I think what I'm gonna try to do is replace all this stuff to Windows. Just the simplest thing I can think of. I think I'm gonna try Windows 64 first and then Windows 32. Yeah, this file is gonna activate, but the problem is this is not gonna go. I think I'm gonna have to reinstall the thing. Yeah, because this is gonna give me another error on the build. So let me try to install the packages again. The issue is that it's pushing this to argv, which means that I'm gonna have to think about the other file again and what does argv represent. Maybe I should console log this as well. I should console log argv here. I'm just gonna keep removing and installing the package because just to see what I get here, the error. Yeah, it doesn't look that this solved. Maybe I'll try 32 now. Because the thing is probably not this that is the error. It's probably something to do with the argv after it pushes. There's jobs here as well, which I don't know what it is. It comes from this opt, which comes from the other file. This is the complicated thing that, yeah, this thing here. It has this config defs and shorthands in this argv, which is the confusing parts. This stuff here to understand. And this is probably what's running the things, the scripts that are breaking. It's gonna be harder to figure out. So it has to be hitting this because it's hitting Windows. And maybe the P is correct because it's not supposed to be because of the, I don't know if it's graphics card or whatever, or processor actually. Yeah, the proper processor that I have is 64 x64. So maybe it's not supposed to be Windows 32 there, but I'm not sure that's the case. Yeah, so this just pushes the argv, pushes this command to argv, to the configuration there. Maybe I should put this after this, so I see what does it have, the whole thing. Oh, it's still saying that it's x64. Interesting. Even though I changed the file. So maybe I'm changing in the wrong spot. Maybe is the rebuild file, not this one, and I'm getting twisted. And the rebuild doesn't have anything. Yeah. So the other one that could be is this one. Trying to look for the log info. Because it does look like it runs the configure. It runs it well and doesn't break anything, and then when it comes to the build part, it fails, it crashes. So that's what makes me think it's not on this file. But maybe this file has to do with the scripts. It's possible as well. It's definitely the case. I think it's calling MSBuild with the command line arguments using the process. That's what's happening. So there's probably nothing inside of the code itself that is related to MSBuild. Just calling the executable. It's finding the file based on the operational system, and then it's calling the file. And I think the MS build is not building correctly, that's the thing. So I'm gonna have to study MS build. But I also wanna see what command is activating that. If I remove this, the problem is that I don't see the console log there that I put here. Maybe if I try to run the file directly, but it might be different. Oh, now it doesn't show anything. That's sad again. Peer dependencies also annoying. I think I'm gonna have to remove React DOM and React and install the correct versions or the correct peer dependency for Web3. That's probably what's causing the issue, I think. I don't think it's Node-Gyp that is causing the issue where it's not running the page. I think that the peer dependency is more likely to be the issue. Yeah, but now I think the message is different. You still got the error there, but it looks like it's installed a lot more packages. Not sure why though. It's still saying that there is an error here. And it's the same error, so. And it still says X64 even though I changed here. And it doesn't show anything here. Maybe we should print something else so it's easily distinguishable to see if it's actually printing or not, but I don't think it's hitting this. It doesn't seem like it's hitting this page. Otherwise it would be printing B there. So it's either configure or Node-Gyp the page. The weird thing is that it says that is this file here. Modules, npm. Yeah, it's this file. Not sure, it says the line here. I'm done. So it calls this file here. It goes directly to here, I think. It's saying the file here, the line. Wouldn't it go to this thing here? Unless the other functions from the other files are calling this one directly. Yeah, it's calling this one, I think. Yeah, fail with exit call. So this is this line here. And then it goes here. It passes, this is being passed to this file. And this is the file that finds Python and MSBuild. I can't see anything in this file that is very obvious that is connected with the other one, the callback from the other one. And this seems like there are signs, but there is nothing related to Windows 32 here. There is here. In 2015. What if I change this to 17? Or some other year? I want to keep this in mind though. 20. Find Visual Studio. So is this file here? Oh, I can't believe that I didn't see the names here. Find Python, find Visual Studio. And those are the files that are finding the thing. Oh, and this is the file that is making the HTTP request to download a bunch of stuff from one of the mistakes that I was getting there, some other command. But I don't think this is this file that's giving errors. And it could be the Find Visual Studio one, which I don't think it is because it finds Visual Studio. It's probably the version, but it's still interesting to look, because maybe there's something about MSBuild here. Yeah, config MSVS version. That's there. There's this thing here. So it does have for 2017. And I think it does show the message there that it found Visual Studio. Yeah. Found that. This file here. So it does go through all of this stuff here. So these files are Visual Studio files that are giving the mistake here. As when it's building. But I wonder in what point is this gonna call MSBuild? I think it's gonna be a command line argument, so it's gonna be difficult to figure out. But it's very interesting. Like it says here, those are the commands to find where the Visual Studio is in PowerShell. But I think it does find the executable, so that's probably not the mistake, the error. Yeah, this is the thing. that is gonna call probably. It calls the process that builds this stuff using Visual Studio. Yeah, but doesn't. What I think is happening is that from the configuration it runs this file and then runs these functions on this file, but then it goes back to the other file. That's why there isn't anything here specifically. Really, that's why it's hard to figure out, because there's a bunch of information that is not visible and that is being passed from file to file. That's the problem. So I have to keep track on my mind of what's happening on this file in the beginning to build everything, and then which file this thing is gonna call, and then everything, because I can't see what is going on just by reading the file. That's the biggest issue. That's why I think it would help a lot to have the visualization stuff. Okay, so yeah, it uses this file, so I can search for this and create this. Oh, it's passing this as arguments to the thing. But then where does it go from here? That's the question. Yeah, so simple thing that I can try is change this to 2022 or something like that. But it gets the minimum anyway, so I don't think it's gonna matter. Oh, actually, it might change because this is gonna be 2022, so because it's getting up there, it calls the function, then it goes here, I think, as the callback. So it goes to the file, finds the version, and it goes back to here with the VS info. And if it is Windows 32, it makes this equals to the, if it's a higher version of Visual Studio, it gets 2015. And it makes it equal to this thing here, which I don't know what it is. Oh, it's the variable, secret variable for the MS version for GYP or GYP. Trying to see if I can find this. Yeah, it's not gonna show because it's verbose. The problem is that I don't know how to run with verbose, because obviously I'm not running. There's Node that runs this on the background as install the package. So one of the packages is calling Gyp to install. So I can't pass the flags to change the thing. Or maybe I can actually. Maybe if I pass in yarn add and then I pass verbose because it's gonna read the command line arguments anyway. But then I don't know if it's gonna be lost in the way, because there might be different processes between Node and the package and Gyp. Because Node calls the package, I think, which calls Gyp. So the command line argument, if I pass verbose from Node, might be lost in the way. But I think it's worth trying. I'm gonna try this after I read this thing here. The thing is, it is spawning this, so the issue is definitely with the version of Visual Studio, and the way that it builds the thing is the wrong version. I think that's definitely the issue. But I want to see where it is, in which part is calling this thing here, and then yeah, I wonder if I can see how MSBuild is working. That's the thing. Yeah, but yeah, it's calling this with these arguments here. That's probably what's happening, because it did it. Yeah, it's using Gyp because it does this in the same way that it did before, so I think I know what's going on. He's using this stuff here. It's on the other file. No, it's this one. Where is it? Oh, it's on the other one. Yeah, this one. So it's going over this stuff here, and then it creates the process and the arguments. So this is the name, and then the args are these things here. So args is this thing here. I think that's what's happening. So it's calling MSBuild.exe and passing these arguments. And then it breaks on one of these, probably on the first one, because it doesn't have anything, it doesn't show anything later. But that's the thing though, I think, because it's calling an executable, there's no way you can see the code. No way that I can go over the MSBuild, just see which lines these are happening, and it's passing it's getting the wrong version, as the functions are not working because it's the wrong version, and it's passing through arguments here to this function in this file, and this is probably happening inside the executable of MSBuild, so I can't really go over it. The interesting thing that I can try to do is change the version there. I already forgot which page it is, but I think it's line 120. It's not this file. It's probably on this one. Let me remember where I'm at. I was trying to think about this thing here. Yeah, I'm gonna try both things at the same time. I'm gonna change, yeah, this is the file. I'm gonna change this to 2022. See if it changes anything. Probably it won't, because I don't think that's the error. I think the error, like I said before, is on the MSBuild.exe, which is the executable, and then there's not much I can do. I'm gonna study MSBuild after I run this again. Because like I said before, it's not that big of a deal, the problem. I can always uninstall everything and then try a bunch of different stuff. The reason why I'm doing this is so I understand better where the problem is coming from and how everything is connected, how things are working under the hood, so next time I encounter problems like this, I have a better idea of or vision of what could potentially be the problem. It becomes easier to debug things. The other thing that I'm gonna try to do is pass the verbose flag. I think I'll try to pass it at the end first, just see if there is any difference. If it's gonna show the verbose logs there, so I can have a better understanding. So it does looks like it's showing a lot more stuff here. Maybe it works. I think I'll be right back. All these runs. Now it shows a lot more stuff. Oh, so it is this package. Interesting. So this is the one that is messing everything up. And this is probably a package from Web3 that Web3 requires. And these are probably files that communicate with Visual Studio, I think. Oh, there's scalar files. I think that scalar is a language, but I'm not really sure. Scalar and C files. Very interesting. Oh, this is the file there that was giving me an error when I was trying to run this from the other folder. So these are the mistakes. Interesting. Extending uint. No, there's still no new things here though. And I think it's a different file actually. This binding Gyp. But maybe not. I think, yeah, the binding Gyp, because this project also has a binding Gyp, I think. So maybe it comes from this one. Maybe not though. Yeah, maybe not actually. Oh, this is also interesting. So there are MSVS files here. So these are the files that communicate with Visual Studio. So this is the file that's probably calling the other ones. Let's this file. Let's see. Yeah, maybe there is extra information, or I just didn't think about clicking on these files before.
The mystery of life isn't a problem to solve, but a reality to experience.
The difficult thing is figuring out which files are important and which ones are not. And where can I find the process that is actually breaking the code. The other thing that I'm gonna look more into probably is the hashing, because that's very interesting and something that I didn't study a lot yet, which is I want to understand how MetaMask works under the hood, how the wallets work, and because I understand the principles, I think behind it, the AVM, how it works, and the difference between a personal account and a smart contract. And I think that I don't remember. There's two difference. One is the cold storage. The other one I don't remember really well. But I think yeah, the account, the personal account only has the transaction hash, which is a Merkle tree, Merkle Patricia tree, I think, and the nonce as well. I think those are the two things that the personal account has, and then the contract obviously has the code, the storage. Then it also, yeah, I think it has a nonce as well. I remember that the smart contract has 4 things, and the personal account has 2 different things. And the difference is pretty much the code. The smart contract runs the code and stuff like that. But I want to understand how the bridge between the network protocol and the Merkle Patricia tree, of the hashing mechanisms of how the transactions are signed, and also how the miners build the blocks. How does that work? Because I don't think there's there's probably multiple different logics that you can place of how the connection is made, and the connection is not really clear to me. It's why would you give the power for the miner to decide the sequence of transactions? And I guess that comes from game theory of the markets, but I don't understand really well how the decision was made and how everything is connected. So I'm trying to clarify that more as well. It looks like this is the last file that is called before it does this thing here. Oh, I have to go back. Okay, I changed. Thought I forgot to go back to 2015 there. You remove the console log as well here. I don't know what this type of file is, this extension, never seen this. Obviously, I assume that is something that communicates the programs with, communicates with VS Code, but I'm not sure. It looks like an HTML page. And it, yeah, probably is, but it has a different extension. So probably something parses this page and then gets the information to run whatever program you want based on the tags here. Let me search for the name as well. I know it's getting this add-on in the private key somewhere. Maybe this is the file that creates the cryptography. I know that zero knowledge proofs are based on elliptic cryptography. I think that's KZG commitments or something like that, where you have a polynomial and then based on the polynomial you create the proof. Obviously more complex than that, but that's what I remember. And that way it's fast and it is always O(n), I think. Because it doesn't matter how much data you have, you can always prove with a fixed amount of points or something like that. Yeah, but that's probably the file that decrypts things based on the elliptic hash algorithm. That's what it seems like. Yeah, that's definitely the file that creates the hash. Interesting. So this is probably the cryptography module that is used in the Web3. Web3 React library. So the file that I was watching is here. This is the source. I'm gonna copy this and search for this. and it's built with Scalar. I think this is a assembly language for one type of computer, if I remember correctly. It's probably assembly instructions. Yeah, definitely assembly, I think. Add, move. It's assembly for ARM computers. Yeah, but probably it wasn't coded by someone, maybe it was. But I think it's more likely that it was compiled into this from Scalar or C. That's your guess. It's probably a file that has all this stuff that is needed. I think I'm gonna spend time studying this because it's actually what I'm interested on anyway. Because I was trying to sign transactions in the blockchain. First using Python, and then it wasn't working. And it's kind of a pain in the ass in any language that you're gonna try. And the first thing that I did was a lot easier because when you use Ethers.js or Web3.js, you have access to the window object, and that allows you to use the MetaMask to do these things. And that's why it's a lot easier, because the MetaMask itself handles all this complexity under the hood, I think, which is the thing that signs the messages and communicates with the RPC provider. So it probably has all these HTTP protocols and the hashing mechanism, and you use that to connect with the blockchain through the window object, which is easy to do if you're building a browser application. But if you don't understand how this connection is made first, it makes you dependent on the provider, on the wallet provider, which is a point of failure. And it also makes you capped to doing things through the bridge of the wallet, let's say, instead of being able to directly communicate with the blockchain by understanding this bridge between the network protocol and the hashing mechanism. And that's what I'm trying to... That's the reason why I did the Free Code Camp challenge to see, but that challenge wasn't really clear because I understand the methods, but I was hoping for something more that is actually what's happening on the blockchain itself, not something that is similar, just to illustrate the concept. I was looking for something more that actually shows what is going on in the communication of Ethereum. But I guess that's very complex as well. That's probably the reason why they didn't do the challenge with that. But I think that's worth studying to understand, and I think this package is related to that, because this package probably handles all the cryptography for the Web3 React library, NextJS. The only concern I have is opening these private key files here, because they might contain something that I can't show on screen, but I don't think it's anything, because I installed this, it's probably nothing related to my stuff specifically. It's just, it comes from it's probably functions to handle private keys, to create the hashing mechanism with the private key. That's what I assume that it is. And maybe I should search for what are H extension files as well. C++. Header file for C++. Makes sense. Yeah, that's why it's failing. And this is always a point of failure from my experience, is whenever you use CMake or something to communicate with Python or JavaScript that handles C or C++ files, there's usually issues, probably on Windows. And it's probably because of all these different versions and complexity of the way that it works. elliptic curve used by Bitcoin to implement this public key. Yeah, I knew that's also zero knowledge proof, I think, is done with an elliptic curve. Elliptic curve. Zero knowledge proof is the name of the algorithm. But I wonder if, because I think KZG commitments use elliptic curves, but I don't remember really well if this uses elliptic curves as well. But I think I'm deviating. I'll probably look into this later. I'll focus on this thing here first. I don't remember where I read. I think it was on the video or article. Maybe I have it on Twitter. Something about KZG commitments and zero knowledge proofs. And the way that they work. It was an explanation, I think. I don't remember where I saw that. Too repetitive. Yeah, okay, so I was correct. ZK's NARC uses elliptic curve cryptography for encryption. Interesting. And this is the library responsible. So it should be interesting to study this, to understand how the hashing works. I don't think I can close these files because they might be useful when I actually try to fix the thing. I'm thinking whether or not should I just install Visual Studio and then handle this and then fix the thing first and then go back to this and study this, or should I study this first and then think about figuring out the solution later? Because it might be the case that the solution is not even the thing that is breaking the code that I have is not even the fact that the library is not working, is something else that might also take time. So maybe it's better to fix the problem first. so this is a C or C++ file. I think we can close this. I'm gonna close this thing here. Close this one as well. I don't like having a bunch of files open because it's distracted. Yeah, so the thing is to focus on this thing now. I need to find which file calls the whatever thing that is breaking here, but I think it's probably this one. But these are just warnings, so. I think I'm gonna close. This is all coming from. I'm gonna close this for now. I'm gonna forget about this for a while. And then I'm gonna focus on this thing here. I think I'm gonna install Visual Studio 2014 maybe. I already have Python. I'm gonna install that while I study this stuff. Yeah, I think it creates the arguments first, so it's probably breaking on top here. Yeah, from here. It probably breaks here. Okay, so I have this file open. I think I'm gonna open them in the order they are here. Add-on private CC. And the weird thing is these files don't exist on this project, it seems like. So where are these coming from? Oh, here. So it does exist. Add-on private CC. I'm gonna open to the side. Let's see if there's... Yeah, it is from source. Just in case, because sometimes VS Code opens on the same page now. I'm gonna open the private key one like this, but I don't think there is anything. I'm just gonna open like this first and then I'll open later. Yeah, it's probably nothing really that is a big deal. It's just the functions. The functions to create the hash. It doesn't look like there's anything dangerous here to show. Okay, so maybe it's breaking on this shoe down. And so it goes from this to this to this, then this shoe, and then here, and then it sends these warnings and breaks. So it extends the some variable to a greater thing there. So maybe it's not here that is breaking. Did it break actually? I don't see any errors. Oh, here. It broke before this. Yeah, now I'm not sure, because it's saying that it works if ends if okay. And I remember seeing that message somewhere in the Gyp thing. This message here. I don't remember exactly which file, but I remember seeing that message. And so it breaks on this project with the rebuild command. Oh, it's gonna install Visual Studio. Oh, that's what I was searching for. Searching for the version there. Maybe I'll run this thing again without the verbals so it shows. Because I remember somewhere that it says what's, I think it's 2014, but I'm not really sure. the version that I have to install of Visual Studio. Yes, here. C++ 14 and earlier. That's the point that I was trying to get there. Dynamic exception, C++ 14 and earlier. And this is the thing, but this file doesn't exist. I think that's the problem. I think maybe this project is creating this file here temporarily. I think this is not the problem. I think it creates this fine. It's the other one that breaks and gives this message here because of the MSBuild. But it's still interesting to look at this one, I think. So it fails when it's building and then calls rebuild. That's what's happening. And then it finishes the installation there. Yeah, so the issue is on Node-Gyp. So I don't think there's much I can do about that. I think you have to install another Visual Studio and then see if it works. I'm also gonna search for this. You want to install it. I'm not sure which ones I need, but I think I'm going to install a bunch of them. It's probably one of these is going to work. But I might have to install the other version as well. So I think those files are the files that create the Visual Studio. The ones that I was looking at. It creates this stuff on the IDE maybe. And then it uses those things to use C++ on under the hood. But now it's confusing. I think what's happening is breaking on the Node-Gyp. I'm just not really sure at what point. I couldn't figure out what point of the code is actually calling the MSBuild.exe. Because I think what it does is it's building the thing, and then it breaks on the node head module, and then initiates the command rebuild, and it keeps going, but it never installs this one because this one's broke. But it installs this one here, so I don't think this one is the problem. But it's still interesting to look at because of the things that I talked about. And then after that it finishes the thing. And I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, but the thing is I can't really see the files, I think. The actual files that MSBuild is using to create these things here. And the files that are giving these warnings and the error here, which is function does not take 2 arguments. Because this path here doesn't exist. That's the problem, because the project is not created. So I'm trying to figure out where is the file that calls these ones, so I can go to that file and see how it's creating. But I think that file is probably on Node-Gyp project, the files that I was looking at earlier. And it's just understanding how the command line arguments are being passed around. Yeah, because I think what it's doing is doing the same thing for Node head that it did for this project, which is that it's creating these C++ files, but then it breaks because of the version. Yeah, it does the same thing that it did on the other one, but for this, it creates this and this on the project, and then it breaks. It breaks on this file here. HDI. Maybe I can search for this on Google as well. Yeah, that's the problem. It doesn't exist. It is weird though that it shows the path here. Yeah, I don't know why this thing is doing this as well. It's really annoying. I started doing this after I reformatted. Maybe I'll have to run Chrome again. Yeah, I'm gonna search. I was gonna search for something. I think I'm gonna watch videos on MSBuild. Oh, obviously. How is it possible? I guess it's just the executable of MSBuild that, but I want to understand what the executable does. I think the only way to do that is to search for this, to study MSBuild. Because the problem with executables is that you can't read them, and if you decompile them, I think you lose information or it becomes really hard to understand what's going on. I think it's possible, but it just takes a lot of time to reverse engineer things. I'm gonna close this for now. MSBuild. I'm gonna watch some of these videos off stream. Oh, this is for USB. So it's probably for the hard wallet, I would guess. It's probably the cryptography for hard wallets. I think this is not the thing that is messing up though, the website actually. I think this is the version of React in React DOM that is not compatible with the Web3 stuff, so it fails. I think it's the same page. Yeah, it's the same. I think worst case I can just figure out how to install this in a different way on the explanation here. Yeah, this is the command that it wasn't running because I don't have this. So because I remember it was running this pre-build or Node-Gyp and then this stuff. So and then runs Node-Gyp because I don't have the pre-build. So if I install this, it's gonna change which one's gonna run. I think I understand much better now than I did in the beginning how it works and what's happening there. It's still a lot to learn though, so. Yeah, Visual C++ compiler and Python 2.7. And Python, I think I have Python in path because of I installed there, so it automatically puts on path. But maybe not. See if Python is on path. Yeah, it doesn't look like it is. Only the 3.10 and 3.11 version. Or maybe it will restart automatically. Hopefully not. Yeah, so this is probably the solution for the problem that I have. Maybe it's not the solution to fix the site, but it's still really interesting. And I think I'm gonna study the stuff. I think I'm gonna do all this installation and things like that, because I might have to restart the computer or do different things. So, but I think it's pretty easy. Should be pretty easy, hopefully, from this point. Just figuring out the versions. That's probably what's incorrect. I think what I'm gonna do is delete all the information that I have there and the package.json for this project, and then I'm gonna copy all the package.json from the file of the other project that I used, which was the VMS marketplace, the NFT marketplace that I connected to Web3. So if I install the same packages, it should work, I think. So that's the first thing that I'm going to try to do, and then I'm going to also try to, if that doesn't work, then I'm going to try to install this stuff here and change the Python and whatever. But I want to study this thing here as well, because I want to understand how it works, the cryptography under the hood. And I think this was really good to do, because now I understand much better of how it works. So hopefully, obviously I'm gonna have to just look it up if I have a problem in the future that is similar, because I can't memorize everything. But it's gonna be much easier because I have a picture of what's going on. And now I know if I see these messages, I'm gonna have a better idea of what to look for. And I want to study more how Visual Studio works under the hood. That's something that I've been curious about, or that I wanted to understand since the beginning, but it's very difficult to find information like this, because it's hard to know what to look for. But I need to clarify the gap between C++ and Python. I think the way that I envision right now is that each programming language is a small little island that serves the purpose of fixing nuanced problems. So as the complexity grows, the languages become more scattered because they become more specialized. And the bridges between these little islands are the compilers, which parse the information from one island to the next, until it gets to the bottom, which is the hardware. So you have these scales of languages. So in each high-level language is gonna have the connection of compilers until it gets to the bottom of the thing. And underneath that, it's kind of like an iceberg where the hardware sits at the bottom of the ocean. And then on the very top, you have Python or JavaScript. And every time you have a problem on the surface, it's very difficult because you have to navigate to the bottom of things, which contain all this complexity that handles the compilers and the information of libraries. And it's difficult to find good videos about this, about how is the connection being made, how does the compiler works, and how these different tools communicate with the operational system as well. So I think it's worth to spend time studying these things here. I think it's gonna make me better overall exponentially. And this also has to do with the web tree as well, so that's another good thing about it, because it also is going to allow me to understand better how the connection between the protocol, the RPC protocol communication is done, how the blocks are being made, how the hashes are constructed, and that bridge between, because the blockchain is another bridge as well, is another island, and then because it's just another language and another process of communication. And then if you bridge the gap, if you understand the island better, it becomes a lot easier to communicate, or to understand how different protocols are communicating with the information. Because the bottom of things is just data as well. Everything is just data and then instructions on the data. Yeah, data structures and algorithms. And I think the network or the internet is kind of like this multifractal geometry that is fitting. So it's pretty much a machine learning algorithm at scale, I think, where the geometry of the information of the electromagnetic field, it fits the environment. So the logic that, because human beings are fitting the environment as well, so the logic that is passed onto computers in the hardware, in the construction of the hardware, which is pretty much the construction of the hardware, is the geometry that creates the electromagnetic field of information that fits to solve different problems. So, and I think it's kind of like the abstraction space. So as the abstraction space becomes more complex, the geometry of the field, of the electromagnetic field, fits the information. And that's how software evolves, I think. So it's just this giant network of logic, which is the geometry of the internet as a whole, I think. And obviously, the more you understand these little parts and how they connect, you start to understand the geometry of everything. And then it becomes easier to build things or debug everything. And there's probably, it is very hard, but it would be really good if there was a way to abstract the patterns in that geometry, to find the archetypes, let's say, inside of the geometrical structure. So because it's probably going to follow a multifractal pattern at different scales. So you can, if you are able to abstract the nuance into the multifractal patterns, and I think that's what happens on the principles we have. So if-else statements, for example, or functions and references, I think those are analogous to the laws of physics. So it's pretty much the same thing, and those are the archetypes that are the essence of the multifractal structure. And the nuances are the differences in syntaxes of each one. But it's very hard to think about a protocol of learning that encapsulates this. Like how can you create it like a meta algorithm that allows you to look for the files and see the pattern, the archetype of the pattern, of the structure of the files and the logic inside of them, so you know what you look for beforehand, instead of having to go through each single nuance like I'm doing here, analyzing file by file and then trying to picture. And that's the thing that I was thinking about doing with the script visualization. I think that's a step in the right direction, which is to be able to visualize the overall structure, so you're able to potentially create maybe a machine learning algorithm, something like that, that is capable of finding the pattern of the structures in the overall structure and abstracting away the archetype that exists inside of the whole geometric structure. I think that probably AGI is going to be something to do with that. I think it's going to be a multifactor algorithm that abstracts or that reduces the complexity based on archetypes, which is pretty much what human beings do when we create concepts and logics. I think that's how the conversion is gonna go. I think that's how the evolution is going as well. So I have these specialized machine learning algorithms that are weights and biases that fit specific data sets, and then but the reason why they're not good is because they overfit, because the sample is always bigger. So there's always this correlation between infinite potential, which is the problem of science, the epistemology. And so it's pretty much this geometrical structure, and then the machine learning algorithms become super specialized, so they fit a small subset of the geometrical structure of the overall thing. And then the AGI is probably gonna be something that is able to capture the archetypes on the multifractal structure of the overall thing, because they're never gonna be able to reach infinite complexity because it's not computationally reducible. So it's kind of like poker, where you never reach the perfect strategy because there's always an infinite amount of different bets you can get. But the frequencies and the patterns of the frequencies remain relatively the same, because even though you're changing the bet size, the only difference is the scale. So you're changing the scale, but the patterns are the same because they follow a fractal pattern under the infinite amount of potential that exists in the game. I think I'm gonna end here. It's been 2 hours already. I think I'm gonna continue this probably tomorrow or day after tomorrow. I'm gonna go over this fast. Maybe, I'm not sure. I'll have to think about it if it's worth it or not, because I might be going on a tangent here, and it might be better to go back to solve this issue now that I feel like I spend a lot of time understanding, and I understand much better what's going on here. It might be better to just solve this stuff and then go back to focusing, because this might be too impractical now. So I have to find a balance between something that is practical and something that is also practical but more in the long term. So maybe it's better to go back and then focus more on continue to build the portfolio, and then build the blog after that, and incorporate Web3 into that instead of studying this stuff. Maybe I'll do both. I'll start building the blog, then if I get tired, I study this stuff. I'm probably gonna save the name of this or leave a tab open so I remember to look into this. And I'm not sure if I'm gonna study this anymore today, so yeah, but I'm done. Probably gonna be back tomorrow or just soon, probably.